What I am about to tell you, most pastors will not say from the pulpit, not because it is not true, because it is uncomfortable, and it directly challenges the story you have been telling yourself about why your prayer has not been answered yet. You have been saying, God is not ready. But what if the real reason is that you are not ready? Not as a criticism, not as a punishment, as the most loving thing God could do for you right now. I need 15 minutes. And by the end, you will understand why the delay is actually God's greatest mercy. Stay right here. There is a journey in the Bible. That should have taken 11 days. 11 days. It took 40 years. Not because God changed his mind. Not because God forgot the promise. Not because the road was blocked. Because the people who were supposed to walk it were not ready to receive what was waiting at the other end. And when I show you exactly what happened and why, you will never see your unanswered prayer the same way again. Stay with me, because before I show you the 40 years, I need to show you what happened at the border of the promised land. The moment when Israel was 11 days away from everything God had promised them. And what they did in that moment explains why some prayers take 40 years instead of 11 days. And it has nothing to do with God's willingness. It has everything to do with something that lives inside us, that most of us have never named. Numbers 13. God had promised Israel the land of Canaan. For generations, this was the prayer, the hope, the destination. And now they were at the border, 11 days away. And God said, "Send 12 spies to look at the land," not to decide whether to go, to see what was waiting. And Numbers 13:27 records what the spies found. "We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit." Milk and honey, fruit, everything God promised, was exactly what he said it was. The prayer was right, the promise was real, the land was there. And then, Numbers 13:28. "But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large." But 10 of the 12 spies saw the same land, the same milk and honey, the same fruit, and focused on the but. The land is good, but the people are strong. God is faithful, but we are too small. The promise is real, but we cannot do this. And Numbers 13:33. "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." In our own eyes. They did not say, "God told us we were grasshoppers." They said, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes." The limitation was not external, it was internal. And because of that internal grasshopper identity, Deuteronomy 1:2 records one of the most sobering statements in Scripture. It takes 11 days to go from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir road. 11 days. That was the actual distance. And it took Israel 40 years, not because God was not ready, because they were not. And the prayer, "Take us to the promised land," was heard on day 1. But the answer was delayed, not by God's unwillingness, but by their unreadiness to receive what he was giving. Now I need to be careful here, because I am not saying your unanswered prayer is your fault. I am saying something more specific and more hopeful than that. There is a difference between being at fault and not yet being formed for what you are asking for. And understanding that difference will change how you see every day of the delay. Let me show you. Israel was not punished because they were bad people. They were delayed because they were not yet the people who could handle what was on the other side of the promise. Think about what it takes to inhabit a new land. You need courage to face what lives there. You need unity to stand together when things get hard. You need faith that is not shaken by giants. You need identity that does not shrink in the presence of something bigger than you. Israel did not have those yet. And if God had taken them into the promised land on day 11, they would have been destroyed by the very thing they were afraid of. The delay was not rejection, it was protection. And Deuteronomy 8:2, God himself explains the wilderness. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. To know what was in your heart. The wilderness was a diagnostic, not a punishment, a 40-year process of God finding out and Israel finding out what was actually inside them, what they were made of, what they truly believed, what happened to their faith when water ran out, when bread was scarce, when the road was long, and the promise was not yet visible. And the God who already knew the answer to all of those questions, let them discover it, so that when they finally crossed the Jordan, they would know what he had built in them during the years they wanted it to be over. And here is the most important question in this message. What is God discovering in you during your delay? Not discovering for himself, he already knows. Discovering for you. Because sometimes the thing God is building in the waiting is the very thing you will need to handle the answer when it comes. And if he gave you the answer before you had been built, you would lose it. The 40 years were necessary because a people who do not know who they are in God cannot hold what God gives them. The land required a certain kind of people, and God was taking the time in the wilderness to build them. The delay is formation, and formation takes the time it takes. Now I want to show you something about the two spies who saw the same land, the same giants, the same fortified cities, and came back with a completely different report. Because Caleb and Joshua saw everything the other 10 spies saw, and they said, "We can do this." And the reason they said that is the most important thing I want you to take from this video. Because the difference between 11 days and 40 years was not the giants. It was the identity of the people looking at the giants. Before I show you what Caleb and Joshua had, if you are watching this and you recognize that your delay might be about formation, not just waiting, type "form me first" in the comments. Just 3 words, because that declaration is the posture of a person who is ready to be made ready. Type it and stay with me, because what Caleb had is available to you right now in this waiting season. Numbers 13:30. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." We can certainly do it. Same giants, same fortified cities, same information, different conclusion. And Numbers 14:24. God said something about Caleb that he said about no one else in that generation. "But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it." A different spirit, not a different situation, not a different set of giants, a different spirit. The giants were the same, the land was the same, the promise was the same. What was different was what lived inside Caleb. And here is what that different spirit was. Caleb did not measure the giant against himself. He measured the giant against God. The 10 spies said, "We are like grasshoppers compared to them." Caleb said, "We can certainly do it." The difference was not confidence. The difference was reference point. 10 spies, reference point equals themselves. Caleb, reference point equals God. Numbers 14:9, Caleb said, Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us, Bana. Do not be afraid of them. Same giants, different anchor point. That is the entire difference. And this is the formation that the delay is building. The wilderness was 40 years of Israel learning, very slowly, very painfully, to stop measuring what was ahead of them against their own strength and start measuring it against God's. And every day of your delay is the same school. The prayer you are waiting on requires a version of you that measures differently, that looks at the thing you have been afraid of and says, not I can handle this, but God can handle this, and I am with God. That is the Caleb spirit, and God is building it in you, right now, in the waiting. Now I want to give you 3 specific things that Caleb did during the 40 years that positioned him as the one person in his entire generation who actually entered the promised land. Because here is the most remarkable thing about Caleb's story. He waited 40 years for something that was 11 days away, and he never gave up. And what he did during those 40 years is exactly what you need to do in yours. And the third thing is what Caleb said when he was 85 years old. That stopped me completely when I first read it. Thing number 1. He kept a different narrative. While the rest of Israel complained, murmured, longed to go back to Egypt, Caleb maintained a different story about what was happening. He did not say, God has forgotten us. He did not say, the promise was a lie. He did not say, we should never have left. He held the original report. The land is good. God is faithful. We can do this. Numbers 14:8. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. He kept the original God-given vision in the face of 40 years of contrary evidence. Your narrative in the delay matters more than you think it does. Thing number 2, he followed God wholeheartedly, even when it did not benefit him immediately. Caleb's wholehearted following did not produce immediate results. He did the right thing and still spent 40 years in the wilderness, because the rest of Israel made choices that he had to live with, even though he had made the right choice. And he did not become bitter. He did not use the injustice of his situation as a reason to stop following. He followed in the wilderness the same way he would have followed in the promised land. And God noticed, consistency in the desert is what qualifies you for the destination. Thing number 3, and this is the one that stopped me. At 85 years old, Caleb said, Joshua 14:11-12, I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. At 85, still vigorous, still asking for the hill country, still believing the original promise. He did not shrink in the waiting. He grew. The 40 years did not diminish Caleb. They amplified him. And that is what God is doing in you right now. Not diminishing you by making you wait, amplifying you, so that when the answer comes, you are more than enough to handle what is on the other side. Let me close with this. Joshua 14:13-14. Then Joshua blessed Caleb son of Jephunneh and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Hebron, the most significant city in the hill country, the place where Abraham, the father of faith, had been buried, the place God gave Caleb, was not just any place. It was the most historically significant piece of land in the entire inheritance. The longest wait produced the greatest inheritance. And I want to say this to the person who has been waiting the longest: the length of your wait does not mean you are getting less. It may mean you are getting Hebron instead of a regular portion. The most significant place, the most meaningful inheritance, the most undeniable story, because you waited and followed wholeheartedly while everything around you said, "Stop believing." Your prayer has been heard. The answer is not late. You are being formed for what is waiting. And when you finally cross the Jordan, it will be Hebron that is waiting, not a regular portion, the best one. If what you are carrying feels too heavy today, do not carry it alone. If today reached you, save this video. Come back to it on the days 40 years feels like too long to wait, and share it with someone who is in their wilderness, wondering if the promise was ever real. Because they need to know it is real. They are just being formed for it. And what is waiting on the other side is worth every day of the 40 years.